Today is Tuesday, September the 11th, 2012. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mullican.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Technology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 171.
Now, last week, we had on our show John Saddington, the tent blogger, and we have two giveaways. He has two ebooks. Number one, the Blogging Starter Kit, and the other one, How to Make Money Blogging. And Matthew right now is going to tell you the winners of both of those books. They both won both books. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So the winners are, and I just lost the live stream, so give me just a second here. The winners are number one, Seth Cotton, number two, Paul Tillman. So Seth Cotton and Paul Tillman, even though you're here in the chat room with us and you can't hear me right now, send us your email address so that we can get those out to you.
All right. We are honored to be joined today by Tim Stevens. For 18 years, Tim's leadership has helped Granger Community Church connect with people who think church is irrelevant. He has done this through the creative blending of architecture, strategy, and technology. He's acutely tuned into popular culture and is instrumental in balancing operations, building creative teams, and inspiring artists to brand each message series and sharpen the weekend experience. He has co-authored 3 books in the Simply Strategic series and is author of Pop Goes to Church, released in 2008, and Vision Lost and Found, released in 2012. You can find him blogging at leadingsmart.com and on Twitter at Tim A. Stevens. Tim, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, welcome, Tim.
Hey, so glad to be here, guys. Looking forward to this.
We wanted to talk to you primarily about your new book, Vision Lost and Found. This book covers the story of Granger right from the beginning. Tell us about how you came to be on staff there and what the church was like at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started attending Granger with my family in 1992, around there. And I was working for a Christian ministry, and we were in church regularly, but felt like because of my work and because of the church I was at, that I was surrounded by followers of Christ, which isn't a bad thing, but 24/7. Like, I had no outlet for being around people that were just exploring their faith. And so when a friend invited me to visit Granger, at first I was skeptical, but came, and it was like a breath of fresh air. I had never been in or around a church that had people there that were excited about their faith as I was at Granger, where there were people who were brand new followers of Jesus, who knew nothing, but they had a passion for Christ, and people who were just there kind of kicking the tires just to see what they thought. And so it was, I tell you, it was an exciting change. It was because I was, again, working at that time in a Christian ministry, and so during the days and part of my job was working with churches. But this was a breath of fresh air. And the church at the time was meeting in a movie theater about 6 blocks from where we're located right now. And it was a church plant. I mean, it was 6 years old. There's 200 or 300 people that were attending at that point, and still lots of excitement. They were at that point trying to find land and find a place to build, and all the stuff that church planters go through. It was fun to jump in those early days.
Tim, I'm curious. You said that you were skeptical at first, before your visit. Why? What were you skeptical of?
Oh boy, I think the churches that I'd served in this ministry where I was involved, I'd been in over 1,000 different churches in a period of 5 years.
Wow.
And so skeptical because it's just another church. I mean, how different can it be? I've been in 1,000 of them. So as my friend was telling me about it, I was just like, yeah, sure, okay, it's a great church and people love to go there, and fine. But I wasn't expecting it to be different than my experience in those 1,000 churches, and it was a lot different. It was when I filtered what I was hearing on the weekend through the ears of a non-follower or the ears of an early follower of Christ, and stripped away kind of all of the church baggage and the church language that I was accustomed to. then it was just refreshing. It was awesome to see how people would respond, how you could invite a neighbor who didn't have any experience in church and they would love it. It would connect with them. It was relevant to them.
During the honeymoon years of Granger, the church experienced 10 years of growth. What do you think in those years did Granger do right, and what might they go back and change, if anything, during that period?
Yeah, so I would say the church started in 86. I came on in 92. And I would say probably through around almost 20 years, I would term the honeymoon years, maybe 18 years at least.
Wow.
And that's where everything was up and to the right. You know, if you looked at a chart,
Yep.
all of the key measurements that you would want for growth, for attendance, offerings, baptisms, commitments, it was just always more the next year than there was the year before. And it was exciting. It was not just a honeymoon as far as growth, but a honeymoon as far as the culture, the staff culture, the way that we connected. We hired amazing people during the season that stayed with us for years and years and years. Many of them still with us. There was the excitement of being a church plant, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, and then finding land, and then raising money for the first building, and then building the first building, and then getting on the property, and then, as soon as we would expand anything, we would outgrow it. You'd add a parking lot, and then it would be full, and you'd add seating, and then it would be full, and you'd add children's space, thinking, boy, this will last us for 3 years, and like 3 weeks later, it's like it's full. Adding services and locations, and so it really was a honeymoon season. I would say, some things that we did right in that season, I mentioned one already, is just hiring great people. We didn't build the church around a personality. We have a very strong lead pastor. He's been here from the beginning, the founding pastor, an amazing extrovert and just cheerleader personality, but we didn't build it around him. He was secure enough to know where he was strong and where he was weak, and brought on people around the team to shore up some of those weaknesses. So, and as far as what we would change, I thought a lot about this before we got on the show here. And the things that I would change would be things that, like, if I could have seen 20 years in the future, here's one example. In the 80s and early 90s when we were building, it was really important for us to reach the target and culture that we have, to build a facility that was very kind of corporate. Well, little did I know 15, 20 years later that corporate is not such an attractive thing anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it can be, it can distract rather than attract. Well, in the 80s and 90s, that was a strong thing. So, boy, if I could, in the future, maybe I would have thrown up a Walmart kind of building and warehousey kind of place and filled it up. I don't regret it. I think it helped us reach hundreds and hundreds of through the 80s and 90s that we wouldn't have reached otherwise. We were aiming directly for kind of the corporate kind of person, the business guy, businesswoman who didn't, kind of self-made and didn't have a need for that. That's who we were after, and that's what we built around.
In the book, you talk about a staff crisis that you refer to as the Big Jolt, and then you talk about a funk that Granger went through. How interrelated were those events, and what brought you through that tough season?
Yeah, so this would be, in hindsight, this would have been the end of the honeymoon. Would have been in 2004 or 2005 when someone who was very, very close to us, someone on our senior team, messed up, and in a nanosecond, we found out about it. They resigned. There was a big mess with other people in the church involved, and it was a tough season. And again, at that point, we were still, growing really, really fast. And when you're growing fast, man, you can hardly keep up, much less take the time to work through a crisis. And we just made some missteps during that season. Lack of communication between us as a team, and ways that we delivered that information to the church. and then not taking the time when the relationships on staff got tough and tense and strained. We didn't slow down long enough to figure it out and to take the time. And of course, it's really clear in hindsight, but in the season, it wasn't clear at all. It's just things were starting to get muddy and a little bit of quicksand, and it kind of I don't know that it was the only contributing factor, but it was a huge factor in just kind of launching us into what in hindsight was about a 5-year funk. A funk being a time when it just is like everything was more difficult, everything was it was just putting one foot in front of the other and making the next decision while you're handling the needs of the church, and then trying to figure out the tension of your own relationships was a tough time. At the same time, within a couple of years of that staff loss, we went into just the deep recession, and for us that was 21% unemployment in our area. So,
wow.
1 out of every 5 people no longer had a job. So people started moving out of the community. Giving went down. We had to lay off staff, cut budget numerous times. So it was a tense few years while we were working through kind of our own relational stuff. I talk about this a lot more in the book, as well as trying to help lead the church through this tension, this crisis, and this recession.
One of the things that strikes me here, especially as you talk about, just during this time, you kept things going, and the press of the ministry, and in hindsight, this realization that you could have taken more time to kind of work through some things, and especially work on relationships within the staff. Right now, our pastor's going through the book of Mark on Sunday nights, and one of the things that's interesting about that gospel is that Mark writes it in such a way that you really feel the press of ministry on Jesus, and yet what strikes you about that is how many times in Mark's gospel it talks about Jesus who gets away to be alone with the Father, and kind of just stepping aside for a moment. And I couldn't help but think about that, even as you were just talking, that we are so sucked in to the pace of ministry and the necessity of doing ministry that we don't have these moments where we kind of stop, reevaluate, get that feeling that we need to then go on. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think beyond that, sometimes I don't know if we're too proud or too, or maybe it's just still the pace of life, that we don't seek outside help. So there were times, and Mark Beeson and I, Mark's our senior pastor, I'm the executive pastor, and we try to talk openly about this with other pastors and leaders now, because we know there's a good chance that they've gone through the same thing. And now that we're kind of on the other side of that season, we can see it a little more clearly. But there were times when, spiritually, we were strong, we were prayed up, so to speak. We'd spent time alone, but we still couldn't figure out our stuff. We couldn't figure out the junk between us. And there was a time in, I think, 2006, 2007, somewhere in that range, where we just looked at each other and said, you know what, we're trained, we're skilled at helping other people through their junk. We can't figure out our own junk. We need help. And so we brought in someone from the outside that we both trusted and loved and knew that loved us. And we just said, hey, we need help. We can't figure this out. The church is too important. The cause is too huge for us to let this go on. We were both strongly committed to the church, this church, and that we were going to figure this out. We weren't going to, a train wreck of our relational stuff pull the church down. And so we called this friend in, and I tell you what, it's just huge having that outside perspective, someone with fresh eyes to be able to talk with both of us individually and together and look us in the eyes and help us get through that.
That's a good word.
Tim, in the book, you write, we realized by the middle of 2009 we could no longer do church the same way we'd always done it. Culture had changed. What did you mean by that, and what were some of the first changes you made?
Yeah, so as far as culture goes, seemed like it was a really fast change, but maybe we just became aware of it very quickly, and it had happened more over a period of time. But couple key ones that stand out to me. One would be that when the church was started in the 80s and through the 90s, early 2000s, there was a sense that visitors, guests, wanted to come and wanted to kind of be in the background, be anonymous, and just kind of watch from a distance. And I think now that's not so much true. Maybe that's true for some people, but the majority now want to participate. They want to be involved. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to make a difference. They may not yet be convinced that Jesus is who he says he is, but they want to jump in and help us make a difference, or feed the hungry, or meet some needs. They're not offended, whereas maybe 15, 20 years ago, it would turn them off, or it would be distracting for them to be in a worship service where there's 4 or 5 or 6 worship songs in a row, because they're observers and they can't participate. Whereas now, that's part of their experience. They want an experience. It's not just a mental assent to something. They want to experience something. And so for them to be in a room full of believers that are worshiping, it helps them in their experience. It helps them take steps. So that was one difference. Another difference was, whereas for 15 or 20 years, our front porch, as far as ministry goes, the place people first came was the weekend services. That had been true for year after year after year. That was our strongest point of growth. And in recent years, it's still the weekend service for many, but there's like 20 different front porches. There are different ways people connect. They might connect first in a group. They might connect first in serving. Had a gal just a few months ago that joined our photography team. And, when we sat down to find out who she was and how long she'd been at the church, she hadn't been at the church. But a friend of hers knew she loved photography and knew that would be a way to get her, to help her take steps. And so she joined our volunteer photography team before she'd ever attended a service. People are connecting via service opportunities when we're helping the community. And we've built in downtown South Bend, a community center to help a specific neighborhood there, and we got people jump in all the time that may or may not have ever been to a service. So lots of different places people connect. The third thing I would say culturally that had changed and is changing is the fact that there are a lot of people on a spiritual journey who don't see the church as a helpful mentor, coach. They don't even think about the church in taking steps in their spiritual journey, which is, for those of us that grew up in church, that's just foreign. It's like, you'd find a pastor, you'd find a church. Yeah. Not for a lot of people in today's culture. They're going to explore their spirituality on their own through Googling, through self-help books, through radio programs and their friends and what they think and their reading. And so we can either deny that and keep focusing on just building everything that we do around the people coming to the weekend services to the church campus, or we can embrace that and say, you know what, if they're not going to come to us, we're going to still go to them. And so that was a huge cultural change. A big piece of our vision going forward is equipping and training our people to basically do church, to be the church where they are, whether those people will ever come onto our property or not. They can take the church to them. They can be the church in those areas, train and coach them well.
It's interesting. In George Hunter's recent book, he's written a lot of books on reaching unchurched people, and he was early on in the church growth movement. But in his most recent book, out of the 300 million Americans that live in this country, he says 180 million of them have no real experience with the church whatsoever. It's foreign to them. And one thing I'm just curious, Tim, I don't mean to get real philosophical here, but I mean you're talking about the importance of experience. We're talking about a postmodern generation here, man. Because isn't this one of the things that's just key to reaching and to ministering to postmoderns?
Yeah, and I think because of technology, TV, entertainment, Hollywood, whatever, I think that postmodern is no longer. We used to think of it as a Gen X thing, as generational thing. It's no longer limited to the young kids, the young
Yeah.
people, young adults. It's emanated through our whole society and it's influenced people who are builders and busters and all the rest, because it's in our face every day, and we can't get away from it. And so it's affecting and influencing everyone's thinking, all parts of society.
Yeah. In the past 3 years, Granger's developed a new senior leadership team, been hit by the recession, reshaped the values of the church, cast a vision for 2016. I mean, was part of your goal here to kind of leave a roadmap that other churches could study when just undertaking such monumental changes and shifts?
That was the primary goal in writing the book. It wasn't the goal when we were going through it.
Yeah.
The goal,
It was necessity when you were going through it.
right. Yeah, some of that's survival, some of it's just figuring out, what's best for our area. But wrote the book and published it when we did, not before the story was fully written. I had a couple close friends said, maybe you should wait because you really don't know if this vision is going to work, and you really don't know if 3 or 5 years down the road if it's going to have the fruit that you want. And we just felt it was too important that we needed to get it out now, because so often books are written out of success, which is not a bad thing. I think it's great to learn from people's success, and I love books like that. But far too few books are written out of people's failures or learning along the way.
Yeah.
And we knew the stuff that we'd gone through was just important to be able to share our journey. The first 2/3 of the book is just a story, basically, and just to share our story. And that's probably the number one response I've gotten on the book is man, we're surprised you showed such authenticity, such the reality of what you guys went through. And I think from the time Mark Beeson came to Granger and from the early days on, that's just been, we have wanted to add value to other churches and pass along failures and learnings. So we'd love to pass along more successes than failures, but whatever they are are the ones that we'll pass along. And I would say your question was related to kind of all this change in a 3-year period. Those changes were kind of the pieces of the recovery. As far as build up to those changes, it was really probably more of a 6 to 8 year journey. So it didn't feel like it was fast at all. It didn't feel like it was fast. It felt like it was arduous at times.
Sure.
And it was exciting by the time we worked through our process of inviting the whole church to help us develop this vision, and there was thousands of people that contributed to it. By the time we actually got through that process, it was like and I don't know what it's like to carry a baby, okay? The church was pregnant, like this 10-month or 12-month pregnancy, and it was ready and excited and couldn't wait for the next step. And as I talked through the book, this few years where we lost momentum, that was just exhilarating to regain the momentum and to see people around. Not the same old Granger, but this new chapter, this new version of Granger going forward.
One of the great things I love about the book is there's so many resources in it of how you presented the vision, the month-by-month process of gathering the information. And I just want to share with everybody the 3 main points of the 2016 vision, and it's in the book. You can download it online. Number 1, the number of people being the church in their neighborhoods, schools, cares, and communities 7 days a week will outnumber the number of casual Christians just going to church. Number 2, we will have remodeled the Granger campus and programs to help not just our congregation, but the greater community with Jesus at the center. And the third one is every follower of Jesus will be a reproducing follower of Jesus, and every church will be a reproducing church. My question is, what kind of progress are you making on each of these, and have you recaptured the big momentum?
Thanks for asking that. Yeah, it's been huge for us to work through this. If I were kind of like bottom line, the 3 points of the vision that you just outlined, it would be this belief that the church is not a building, it's not a program, it's not a gathering. The church is the people, and everyone probably watching us right now would agree with that. But what we decided to do was really get serious about believing that, about putting that into our strategy and into our every way that we were about doing church. So, example of that, steps that we've taken. That middle point was that we've activated the campus to help the community, not just our congregation. So for years, as long as we've been building buildings and buying property, it's been pretty much focused around the weekend gathering. You build a large room.
Yeah.
In our case, a room that seats 2,000 people. You do a lot of services around that. You have space for the children that are there while the adults are there, and you have office space and classrooms and such that happen around that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and we're going to continue doing all those things. But we realized that this property, this church building, was really, for anyone in the community, was known as that's the church. That's where the congregation is. And that's partially true, but we wanted to communicate both to our people and to the community that this is for them. We're here to help meet the needs of the community, to help elevate, transform the community.
Yeah.
So one big change we just made, in fact, the sign goes up tomorrow, is we changed the name of our property. If you were to drive by our property anytime in the past 20 years, you would see Granger Community Church. That's what it's called. We took down Granger Community Church. We're now calling it the Granger Commons. And Granger Community Church meets at the Granger Commons, but the community meets there as well. We've opened a retail and a food space so that we can invite the community onto the property, even when they're not coming for a church service. And when they're there, they're going to be loved and served by followers of Jesus, and they're going to experience grace.
Wow.
And they're going to see it as a place where when they're in times of need, they can find hope and help. That's our goal, 4 or 5 years out from now, that it's not just, well, boy, they changed the name on the sign, but people really see this property as a place where the community can jump in. An example of that would be a year ago, the local school, it's about 3,000 kids in this high school, and we're just trying to figure out how can we serve the high school, serve our community. And so we came alongside them. They were having problems with their winter dance. So this is a dance that they held at the school, but it wasn't ideal location for it. Lots of dark corners and lots of people getting in trouble. And so they wanted to elevate that experience for the kids. And so we found a DJ in the church, and we provided the room, and we provided scores of volunteers and a nice, beautiful place. And this past January, and we had 1,700 kids jumping around, having fun in the auditorium for their winter dance. Now, did we preach a message? Did we pray a prayer? No, this was a public school event. We were there being the love and hands of Jesus for these students and for their parents that were there and for the teachers that were there, and helping to elevate the community.
Tim, there's so much more we could talk about. Time slipping away. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you and the ministry there at Granger. We were, in the pre-show we talked about other people that we've had from Granger there, Kem Meyer, Mark Waltz, and just admire the ministry and what all is happening there. I wonder if you could just let our listeners know where they can find you on the internet.
Absolutely. So I blog at leadingsmart.com, and I try to throw up a couple posts a week, specifically focused to help church leaders around the country and around the world. And then if you want to tweet with me or relate with me there, Tim A. Stevens is my Twitter address. And Google around a little bit. You'll find us on Facebook as well. The website for our church, where we help resource church leaders, is wiredchurches.com, WIRED churches.com. And lots of basically anything that we find that can help. Again, whether it's our successes or our failures, we'll throw that on there, or do it in a workshop or a conference or a download in some way to be able to help church leaders.
Tim, we did have one quick question from the chat room. as you've been through this whole process with your church, what's one spiritual practice that you have engaged in that's maybe surprised to have grown you as a leader the most?
I assume they're asking personally, probably not so much church-wide.
Yeah, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's probably finding rhythms. For years and years, I heard or understood or heard from other church leaders that there was a very prescribed path for spiritually connecting. So it was, it's gonna be very early in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get up, you're gonna pray, and you're gonna spend time with God, and it's gonna be this length of time, and it's gonna be like this, and that's gonna be a great foundation for your day. And I tried to be that person for years, and that was not my rhythm. And so for me, because I'm not a morning person, thank you, by the way, for changing this podcast to noon instead of 9 a.m. Because I'm not a morning person, it's just finding those natural rhythms. Spending 15, 30 minutes on your knees in prayer is a great thing. But a great thing also, and one spiritual practice for me that I try to do better at is just breathing prayers all through the day, asking the whispers to God, asking Him for assistance or insight or perspective or help. Going into a meeting, during a meeting, after a meeting, taking time, turning the radio off in the car, and taking time just to breathe prayers to God through the day. That's been something that's helped keep me centered and take steps.
Well, Tim, again, thanks so much for taking time out
Absolutely.
to be with us. Blessings on you and everyone there at Granger. The Lord be with you.
Thank you. So glad to do this.
All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Now, we've been talking about Tim's book, Vision Lost and Found. We do have a copy of that we're going to be giving away that you can enter to win at thetechnologyshow.com/giveaway, where also Tim's been gracious enough to provide us with some copies of Pop Goes to Church. We're going to be giving those away later. But enter this week to win Vision Lost and Found. Loved it. Loved the book. Great read. And it's really kind of helped me as we cast vision for our church. Now, I know a lot of you watch our show live. You go to our website and watch it. And a lot of people like to drive their car. And while you're driving your car, you can listen to our podcast. You can download it through iTunes. And we're just asking if you would just take just a few seconds. The link will be in our show notes to go over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, download our episodes. Just help us out a lot. We would really appreciate it.
All right. Hey, big thanks to Eric Fieldstrom. Hope that I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. He found and alerted us to some broken links due to our switching over from the old website to the new website. So thanks a lot, Eric. And he also left us some great comments, so let me just read this. He said, quote, "Other than my church podcast and CBC's, Under the Influence, your show is the only one that I listen to regularly. Your topics are insightful, even for a Canadian. And it's instructive to see how technology can be used in an effective way to reach people for Jesus." Eric, thanks a lot. We appreciate you giving us a heads up on the broken links, and then also for taking time out to give us a shout out and giving us a few words there. All right, going to keep moving here. Time.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
Time for yes?
Yes?
Download of the week.
So our download of the week, they just announced yesterday a new app, iOS app for either your iPad or your...
Update. It existed before yesterday, but an update that was a huge update for a pretty worthless app before this update. Yeah.
It's the Google Drive, which used to be the Google Documents app. And one of the big things that was nice about the update, now I did this on my iPad, you can now edit documents. So if you're using, right here for our show, we use Google Docs.
Yeah, we can make
and
our
all
show
three of us
notes,
can
right.
edit. We get in there and do things. And so
Right,
now
right.
you have it for your iPhone or your iPad. You can get in here and edit, and it really is functional.
So let me get it up here on the screen because
All right.
we have it. Here, maybe. There it is.
There it
Okay,
is.
Is it working?
Yeah, and so
All
let me
right.
just show you. This is real quick. I'm not going to get into a lot of editing or anything, but
I don't think anything's happening up here, sadly. So that's
we see
probably
it
my
here.
fault, not yours. Oh,
Yeah.
you do.
we see it on that screen.
Okay, good.
Here we go. Let's see.
Hey.
Yep, it's working.
Yes.
All right, so right here you can see these are all show notes here.
Yeah.
So I go through, I can scroll. If I go back, there are some show notes that Heath initiated and shared with me, and so there they are. And so
Show us how to edit one real quick. Open one up, and this is the big function.
Yeah, I just said I wasn't going to do that.
Oh, never mind. Never mind.
I said I wasn't going
Hey,
to
you
take
can't
the time.
let people
see our show notes.
That's
I see. They're
Yeah, but can I say
confidential.
this? I mean, Matthew, you made the point that they had this app before they just updated it, but it was not functional.
No, all you
Even-
could do is look at what was there.
Yeah,
right?
what's
Yes.
impressive to me is just, I mean, going through these, opening things up. I was really impressed yesterday just the access that you have, the speed with which it loads, and you can get in these, you can edit them. So this is a very helpful. Again, I don't want to be doing a lot of editing on the iPhone, but for the iPad, I thought it worked very well.
And Google Drive now will work with much more than just documents. Like, it's not just that any longer. It's also, you could put just about any kind of file type up there, kind of like a Dropbox sort of deal. And I assume that along with editing documents, you'd also be able to listen to music, or if you
Yeah.
had something there or whatever it was. You just have access to it now on a mobile device, which is great.
Just another way to send Google your personal information so that they can track you for Big Brother.
Since Steve isn't here today, I'm glad you made that point.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
right. No private life. All right, let's keep moving to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
Traditionalists worry that technology allows young believers to practice religion without committing to what in the South is called a church home. And they're right. Lisa Miller, in an article she wrote for CNN's Belief blog entitled My Take, How Technology Could Bring Down the Church. Source CNN.
We just think that this is more likely to reach a generation that's more used to an iPad than a hymnal. Arthur Jones, pastor of The Well in Plano, Texas, explaining why the church has spent $1.3 million on a new 600-seat auditorium maxed out with the latest technologies. Source, WFAA News.
As president 35 years ago, I called for decriminalizing, but not legalizing the possession of marijuana. Since then, U.S. drug policies have been very horrible to our own country because of an explosion in prison populations. When I left the White House in 1980, there were about 500,000 Americans in prison. Now there are 5 times as many. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world. The number of people in prison for nonviolent crimes involving drugs has increased more than 12-fold, 12 times as many. Former President Jimmy Carter in renewing his call for the decriminalization of marijuana. Source, CNN News.
People don't want gadgets anymore. They want services that improve over time. They want services that improve every day, every week, every month. We want to make money when people use our devices, not when they buy our devices. Scott Bezos, speaking at last Thursday's announcement of the new Kindle Paperwhite, the 7-inch Kindle Fire HD, and the 8.9-inch Kindle Fire HD. Source, The Verge.
As a young woman of faith and a leader, I am humbled to follow the First Lady, whom we all admire. So thank you for inviting me here. As we close this day, let us quiet our hearts in prayer. God, I stand before you and ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing unto you. I pray for our President, Barack Obama. May he know your presence, O God, as he continues to serve as a leader of this nation, as a husband to Michelle, and as a father to his daughters. Help him to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with you. I pray as well for Governor Mitt Romney. May he know your presence, O God, as he continues to serve as a leader, as a husband to Ann, and as a father to his sons and their families. Help him to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with you. I pray for our country in the next 9 weeks leading up to this election, for those of us here and for our fellow citizens who met last week. May we make our children proud of how we conduct ourselves. We know our human tendencies toward finger-pointing and frivolousness. Our better selves want this race to be honest and edifying rather than fabricated and self-serving. Give us, O Lord, humility to listen to our sisters and brothers across the political spectrum, because your kingdom is not divided into red states and blue states. Equip us with moral imagination to have real discourse. Knit us, O God, as one country, even as we wrestle over the complexity of how we ought to live and govern. Give us gratitude for our right to dissent and disagree. For we know that we are bound up in one another and have been given the tremendous opportunity to extend humanity and grace when others voice their deeply held convictions, even when they differ from our own. And give us wisdom, God, to discover honest solutions. For we know it will take all of us to care for the widow and the orphan, the sick and the lonely, the downtrodden and the unemployed, the prisoner and the homeless, the stranger and the enemy, the thirsty and the powerless. In rural Africa, I am witness to thousands of HIV-positive mothers, fathers, and children who are alive today because Democrats and Republicans put justice and mercy above partisanship. Help us to keep that perspective even as we debate one another. God, I thank you for the saving grace of Jesus and for the saints who have humbly gone before us. I thank you for the words of St. Francis of Assisi, whose prayer my husband and I carry with us, both in our home in East Nashville and in our work across rural Africa. As we enter this election season, I praise St. Francis's words for us all. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Yeah, awesome prayer.
Yes.
I wasn't even aware of this. Matthew asked me on Saturday if I had heard this. I said no. Someone had put him onto it, and so he played it Sunday night at church. But wow, man.
Well, yeah, and handed out there. You can get the full text copy of it, and encouraged people to say, "Let this be the way that you pray." But how many different ways can we go with this thing? It's jam-packed. I mean, so from the very beginning, she starts off, all right, and who is she? That's the first question that we're getting from Marcy out of the chat room.
Yeah.
Jenna Lee Nardella, she is kind of heads up Bloodwater Mission, which is a charitable organization started by Jars of Clay. She's in her 20s. I think she started at 21, I think, and I don't think she's much older than that. I think she's right about that age. They contacted her a week out and said, hey, at the closing Tuesday night of the DNC, would you offer the benediction? I don't think that she had to have her prayer like pre-written and vetted. She wrote it herself, got up and prayed it. And what a prayer, because she prays for, she starts off praying for President Obama, but not in the way that you typically go, like as a husband, as a father. The same prayer then for Mitt Romney, and now she's across the aisle there with that, and just, man, there's so much good stuff of it. I will find the transcript. It's being asked for in the chat room. I will post it right underneath the video, and you can have it, but it's on there. It's on our website.
You know, that's a very appropriate prayer to play today, as you know, it's the anniversary of 9/11. And you think, you know, we're just 11 years past that, how united we were 11 years ago, how divided we are now. And it's a prayer that reminds us, no matter what side of the spectrum you fall on, we have a lot more in common than we do.
I love the fact, I mean, she prays, thanks God for faith in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Very specifically. And
and
is it? She could not pray that at high school graduation.
There you go. Well, and one thing I said to you guys before the show, even before the pre-show, that I love the fact that she brought Saint Francis of Assisi in this thing. I mean, she takes us back 800 years over church history. The voice of the saints still speaking. Just great. All right, let's tackle some of these other stories here. So Lisa Miller is concerned that technology could bring down the church.
Yes,
and grind it to a halt.
Right, and in the show notes, we'll link not only to this article. When you read her article, it links to another article and a study that she kind of based this on. And what she is talking about is not church in the sense of kingdom, but church as in
the physical gathering.
Yeah,
of the
weekly
people of
meetings,
God.
yes.
Yeah, she ties into a 2010 study that was published in USA Today. And so here are some of the stats from that particular study. 65% of these are 18 to 29-year-olds. 65% rarely or never pray with others. 38% almost never pray for themselves either. 65% rarely or never attend worship services. 67% don't read the Bible or sacred text. Many are unsure Jesus is the only path to heaven. Half say yes, half say no. So when she says, her fear is that technology will bring down the church, it's that we have these devices, the iPhone, the iPad, and we can bring everything to ourselves. And so I don't need the worshiping community. I can, I've got my YouVersion Bible app here. So why do I need to go to the church? Because I don't need for them to read the scriptures for me. I can read it. And guess what? Heath will have his comments posted on a particular verse, and Matthew will have his. And so I can just stay at home and read all this stuff.
And the verse that I'll post on YouVersion is, do not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing.
And forsake not the assembling of yourselves together.
Oh, my.
So interesting. You might want to check that article out. I am fascinated by this church in Plano, Texas. It's a United Methodist church.
Yes.
The average age of their congregants, 57 years old. And he says this, that, by the way, that's the average age of a United Methodist throughout our denomination.
Wow.
He said the average age in our community is 30. And so they have, to the tune of $1.3 million, they are going in whole hog. They've built this whole different auditorium, absolutely immersed in technology, and he says we're going after this, this demographic, this age group. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think here?
Here's a question. The pastor, Arthur Jones, is 28, ministering in this church of older people. I'm looking here on the story. They're building a 600-seat auditorium. I'm wondering how big their church is now, but Jerry Jones would be so proud. 104 feet of project space for videos, 7 projectors, 25-foot long high definition screen. Love it. I mean, I'm very, but when you look on the video, very traditional in how it. I don't know if this is their old one or
I think that's
the new one. It's very traditional.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have the same question you have when you look at the article. Is that the new auditorium? If it does, it looks very traditional, but they're going to bring you into a media immersive experience.
Yeah,
is what they're going to do.
Yeah.
What jumps out to me is 1.3 million. I mean, that's quite a commitment.
Compared to other building projects I've seen with the technology they're doing,
that's not.
I want to see who's doing this for them, because that's a pretty good, not a bad. Now that is just an auditorium. We're not talking about educational.
Well, if you don't think
space
that's a big amount, we're trying to get about a $500,000 contribution to the show, Heath. So maybe you could pray about that.
Wow. Yeah.
Listen. Jimmy Carter's comment.
All right, I just want to say something. In the pre-show, when we were practicing this, I tried to do Jimmy Carter's voice, but I found myself channeling Dan Aykroyd, who used to do Jimmy Carter on Saturday Night Live. So I decided just to not do that, and it doesn't matter what voice I do, I cannot say that word.
Decriminalizing.
Can't say that word.
Yeah. I am fascinated by this article, and I think that there are a couple of things that factor into this. Number one, the overpopulation of prisons in America.
Yes.
This is a drum that Chuck Colson has been beating for for the last 25 years up to his death in prison ministry. He said we're incarcerating men and women that should not be incarcerated. There should be other ways to deal with them, more constructive ways. And now here's my question. We talked about this in the pre-show. How do you decriminalize the use of marijuana and yet not encourage people to use it? So that's an honest question I have. I am not necessarily opposed to what Carter says. I just want a greater discussion to say, what does that look like? And we had this study 2 weeks ago that concerns me. This study out of New Zealand that seems to strongly suggest that if you have a teen who's using pot all the time, it developmentally hampers them for life.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is going to be an issue until you see a move one way or another, till we make it where it's not a criminal. I can't say the word. Where it's not a criminal act to have marijuana. To maybe they'd make it illegal to sell it. I don't know.
Yeah, he says,
who
I don't
knows?
want to legalize it. I just
Right.
want to decriminalize it. What does that look like?
Right. Because we talked about in the pre-show. Well, would you get a ticket? Well, that means it's criminal. And another thing you said, we were talking about the 3 strikes and your outlaw that has to do with
Cocaine.
with cocaine and drug offenders, whereas somebody could steal $1 billion, a white collar crime, and get 5 years. And so there's this
Literally.
You're right.
Yeah, I watched this documentary. This guy, he milks people out of millions into the $1 billion range, and he gets 5 years.
Yeah.
And you look at the guy who was selling cocaine, or not. We're not talking about a high level cocaine cartel. We're talking about a street level kid.
Yeah.
Who's been busted for the 3rd time, and he's spending 20 years in prison. Here's what I would encourage you to do if you have any access to ESPN series. What is it? 30
for 30.
30 for 30. They did one on Len Bias.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, that's an eye-opener.
Yeah.
And because of Len Bias's death, he was a basketball player, University of Maryland, #1 pick coming out in the draft. Boston got him, and he died of cocaine before he ever played his first
just
pro
a few
game.
days after the draft.
Yeah.
Died of a cocaine overdose.
And so there was legislation. They got pushed through. There was such an outcry in the country.
Right.
But we had Josh Leroy on a few weeks ago, and he said he agrees it was overreaching. It was too much. So if you have access to that, would encourage you to watch
It's
that.
on Netflix, so you can watch it.
And so I'm torn on this.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily against the decriminalization of it. I want to know what that looks like. That's what I don't know.
I think we would all. This is how I'm thinking. I'm thinking we did a war on poverty, and we've seen poverty explode. We've had a war on drugs starting in the 1980s.
Bam.
We've seen that explode. So I guess in my thinking, in libertarian thinking, I guess, is how do you, you think about the millions, billions, trillions of dollars spent for police, and you think about the way that
just the upkeep for prisoners in this country.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And our approach to the war on drugs has been almost all punitive. And this was one of the things that Colson said, that it's the wrong approach here. We're not doing any kind of getting to the moral issues of young men and women's lives. So,
and I've heard the argument made, if you legalize it, you decrease demand. If it's legal, and
well, here again, Carter says, "Now I don't want to make it legal." So what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like.
I can't not believe Jimmy Carter involved in double talk as a politician. That's very surprising to me.
Politicians just normally don't do that.
Yeah, I know.
All right, real quick here, the last quote has to do with Amazon's announcement last Wednesday. So they've talked about the new Kindle, which they're calling the Paperwhite, which
I want to talk about this so bad, but I'm busy working on other stuff over here for the show. But Paperwhite, what a sad name. I was talking with my wife about this, and I said, "Yeah, so the Kindle Paperwhite," and she said, "The Kindle Paperweight?"
Now, why is that sad though? I mean, there are names that come out all the time. We'll just get used to that. Like the iPad. I mean, when that first came out, you know as well as I do all of the derogatory comments.
you could turn it that way. That Paperwhite isn't. You're not turning it that way. It just sounds like a completely other word. iPad didn't sound like something else. I mean, you could get connotations if you related it to something else.
So your criticism, it sounds too much like Paperweight.
Yes. Then the Kindle Paperweight? What?
The way this is different from the regular Kindle reader is it's backlit, so you can in the dark you can read it, and if you have a Kindle, it's kind of a brown on green or black on green kind of background. So now this is more white. So LCD. To me, the big stories are the Kindle Fire HD and especially the 8.9 Kindle Fire HD. That's $299. You can actually get a contract for $499. You can get it, and it has LTE service. But to me, it's not worth it because the data on that is so small that you get.
Now here comes the question of the 7-inch tablet. We recently reviewed the Nexus 7, which is very similarly spec'd, but, well, I say that as far as like screen size and resolution it is. But on paper, the Nexus 7 is the better tablet. At $199, if you bought one of these devices from Amazon, you'd be getting a 7-inch tablet. It would have, the only better thing it would have is 16 gigs of data storage. The processor and graphics chip that's on the Nexus 7, in my opinion, is the better of the two, meaning that it's going to last longer. And one of the beautiful things that Amazon has done is they have not rolled their hardware and software team into the same unit, which means that you don't have to have a Kindle to read a Kindle book. You can read a Kindle book on an iPad, on a Mac, on a PC, on everything, and you can read a Kindle book on the Nexus 7. You don't have to have a Kindle device to watch on-demand movies. You can watch those on an iPad. You can watch them on a computer, other places. So by not rolling those together, you still get access to the same Amazon stuff on that device. And I feel like, just my guess is the lifetime longevity of it's going to be better with the Nexus 7 than with the Amazon Kindle HD.
I think if you're fully vested as a Prime member, that there's a compelling argument for the 7-inch Kindle HD. But I mean, not to go against what you said, I think it makes good sense.
Did they announce the price for the 8.9 inch?
$299.
That's not bad.
No, it's great because the low-level Apple product is going to be $499. So I mean, it's compelling in that market. Now, as Matthew said, I think in the 7-inch, I agree with him that the Nexus 7 tablet is still the industry leader. What they added to the Kindle Fire 7-inch this time is a front-facing camera, and I thought I understood or read somewhere Skype comes with that. So if you have the original Kindle Fire, you had no front-facing camera on that. Right. And this is a way better. Now, they did announce on the Kindle Fire, the old edition, it's a better processor, and it's for $149. So you can get that brand new for $149. Again, no front-facing camera on it.
And speaking of Apple products, tomorrow, a big day for Apples. They'll be announcing something. We think we know what it is, and my sources inside.
Yeah. Your sources.
What are they telling you? What are they telling you?
Something big.
Yeah, something big. Probably going to be the iPhone 5. That's the big speculation.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors that will not be called the iPhone 5, simply the new iPhone.
The new iPhone. Okay.
Yes.
There's also speculation that somewhere, maybe as late as October, that they'll be announcing a 7-inch tablet. So real quick.
Maybe in this same announcement?
Well, perhaps.
Maybe not.
So let me ask you, TG, given the cost, what we saw with the Nexus 7 and with the Kindle Fire, what for Apple is, what do you feel like is the marketable range for cost? What gets them out into a dangerous range?
I'm just going to reiterate what everybody else has said. If they bring a 7-inch device at $199, it's scorched earth.
Oh.
Yeah.
They've literally pulled the rug out from under. Well, we don't know. They could. Hold on. Let me finish my thought.
Go ahead.
However, there is this premium mindset in the Apple community. If you're getting Apple, you're getting the best, and there's a premium price to pay for the best. So it probably will be more along the lines of $250, $249 would be my guess. I hope, and I'm rooting, and I would if I could speak words of awesomeness into the minds of the people at Apple, it would be $199. Just do it. I want to see. I want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Look at the quote I read by Bezos, that last line. We want to make money when people use our devices, not when they buy our devices.
Right.
Which people are saying that some are even saying that they're losing a little bit of money on these devices.
Yeah.
Apple is not in the business. I mean, they sell these devices to make money. That is where they're going to make their money. They're going to make it up front.
Yes.
And so if it's costing them $199 to make it, I think Apple could get away with going as high as $299 because they bring people into an ecosystem. I think if they get beyond $299, it's going to be a problem.
I think $299 is going to be a problem.
Do you?
I do. Because, again, the ecosystem is just like that comment that we read. Hey, look, there's a monkey and pieces of a gun in front of him. Hey, look, he's picked up a bullet. Hey, look, he's figured out how to attach the barrel to the trigger mechanism. Like, the marketplace is getting there from Amazon. It's getting there from... They're catching up, and I don't think that $100 premium on that device is gonna be the thing. Now that means a complete restructure of their entire product line because they've got iPod Touches that are the same price as one of these tablets.
Right.
They've got, I believe, some of their lower end iPod Touches are $199,
right?
And that's what they're now putting up against a Kindle Fire HD or a Nexus 7 tablet. And if you compare those two, if you said, okay, which would you rather have? The 3 whatever inch screen iPod Touch that's got a processor from 2 years ago in it, or the Nexus 7, which is, all right? I'm immediately going to say, toss the iPod Touch out the window. I'll take the Nexus 7.
Yeah, right.
And so that it means a complete restructure of everything, no matter what they do. I mean, no matter what they do, that's going to have to change. That price is going to have to change because these guys are being aggressive. I love competition.
Totally.
I love what it does for Apple. It's going to push them further. And as an Apple fan, that makes me happy. I don't want them to have the lead and the last word. I want them to be innovating and moving and doing things that are incredible, and that's what I hope will happen.
There's Matthew Classic for us
Oh,
right
yes.
there.
Hey,
Yes.
the giveaway's live, so go to the Technology Shot. The
Technology Shot.
Shot the sheriff. TheTechnologyShow.com/giveaway, and you can enter to win a copy of Tim Stevens' book, Vision, Lost and Found. You can also do that on our Facebook page. Heath already mentioned, I'm maybe stealing time. You have anything else you want to talk about, or are we ready to tie this thing up?
Yeah.
Heath already mentioned, if you guys can, those of you who are listening right now, it'll take you all of 2 to 3 minutes. Go to iTunes and give us a rating. And if you even want to spend a little bit more time, write a review.
Please.
Particularly favorable ones. Favorable ones. The goal is to, in the discovery system of iTunes, to be something that's going to pop up on other people's radar who may not know about the show. We need to have some good reviews. So head over there and do that if you can. That would be awesome for us. Spread the word. We're still trying to get it figured out. We've tweeted wrong this week about the time of our show. I originally had the live stream set up for tomorrow, and so we're still trying to get adjusted to this Tuesday thing, but we're excited about it. We feel like it's been a good thing, and help us spread the word about the Technology Show.
Yes, spread the
Listen,
word.
and you can go to our website and see our upcoming schedule. We usually go through about the next 2-3 months. Not going to do that. Just want to talk about our guests for next week. Really excited. Love both these guys. Heath's showing the book there. Who we got here, Heath?
We got Jeremy Summers and Matt Leroy. They're going to join us to talk about their new book, Awakening Grace.
Yeah.
And we're going to be giving away this copy right here, which is autographed by the authors, not by us.
Not by us. All right. Listen, as always, we want to thank you for joining us. Heath, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Then go to heathmullican.com. Tomorrow's a huge day. Gonna help you set up a blog. So heathmullican.com.
Matthew.
MatthewTG.com.
All right. If you want to do any further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to give us comments like Eric did, just email us at thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, why don't you call our number, 3049 Theology. Leave us a
Make my
voicemail.
day. Call that number right there.
There you go, 304-986-5649. Leave us some comments. We may even play those comments on the air. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.